know of someone who wanted to grab the information, then we will be sure to send it. And I believe Naomi's going to let us know where we can find the different sessions for folks who missed sessions throughout the week. All right, so the biggest instruction here is to stay muted unless directly prompted. So we'll have some opportunities for questions and some chances to talk, but if everybody could just click the mute button, and that will allow us to control the sound and make less back. I think it's, so everybody could grab that mute button and mute yourself. And if you have a question in the chat box, it's easier for us to find the questions if you just label it question. And then resources, a ton of resources always come up. You all have great information for each other, and we would love to have you share that. So if you have a resource to share, just title it resource, and we'll make sure to collect those and send them out as well. There's also a raise your hand function. So if there's something that you want to share, or you have a question that you want to jump on the screen for, there'll be certain points where like, hey, does anyone want to raise their hand and jump in the conversation? And we'll be looking at the raise the hand function at that point. All right. So again, we are recording. And I think, yeah, so let me actually check out the chat box and see how we're doing as we get into it. Excellent. All right, perfect. Everybody is jumping in, saying hello. Great. I think everyone's very happy that it's Friday. All right, so the OCF Early Literacy Project. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Free Libraries Summer of Wonder. There is going to be some sample schedules and some grab and go content. So they're going to show different ways that you can use the literacy resources. And actually this slide is slightly incorrect. So I'm just going to jump past it. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Victoria Wiley, and she's going to talk a little bit about the OCF OST Lit Team Summer Projects. Victoria, are you ready? And then I'm going to pull up your presentation if you just give me 1 minute.
I'm ready. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So we're going to get started. While Ann is pulling that up, I just want to quickly kind of run through for my presentation. So we'll start with quick introduction. We'll do a little literacy game. We'll talk a little bit about the literacy crisis in Philadelphia. And then we'll go into the summer literacy plan. And then we'll wrap up with some questions and hopefully answers, but we'll get the answers to you if I can't answer them at the end of the session.
All right, Victoria, how does this look? Does this work?
It works.
All right, just let me know when you want me to scroll down, and I will be your assistant here.
Okay, so if you go to the next slide. So I would like everyone in the chat box to send an emoji face on how you're feeling about your summer literacy planning currently. How do you feel about it? And then we'll dive into how as we're going through. So, literacy game. Ready for the literacy game. Oh, I see good. I see smiles. Thumbs up. Awesome. This is great. So, our literacy game. That's the next slide. That was our agenda. So I just wanted to do a quick game, and it's a rhyming challenge. You can do this with younger kids, and you can adopt it for it to be applicable for older kids. But I picked 4 words that you can start with: cat, sick, great, and D. I want us to pick one of the words and rhyme, and we'll continue until we run out of words to rhyme with, right? So we can't rhyme anymore. So in the chat box, pick one of those words to rhyme with. So if you pick cat, pick something that rhymes with cat, like cat or bat, right? So continue that in the chat box. And this is just something you can do in, as you're opening up literacy, thinking caps on and people ready to. And to challenge that, you can incorporate time. So maybe you put 20 seconds or 30-second limit. Or you even have the young people make it a rap. So they have to do a rhyming rap. So we have a lot of engagement going on.
Yes, Victoria, we have a lot of engagement.
No, I love this. We're going to take a minute to just kind of see some of the stuff that's in our chat box. I don't know what happened to the presentation. I hope Ann is still with us. Ann, are you still there?
Yeah. Yep, I'm here. Are we back?
So we got engagement going on in our chat box right now. All right, so if you want to, Ann, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. So I wanted to lay out just a little bit of literacy, the literacy crisis in Philadelphia. 66% of Philadelphia's children don't read on grade level. What does that really mean? That means that the overall success in high school completion can be determined by that number, right? So grade level reading can really help us predict who is going to complete high school, who is going to have overall success in school. Another stat for us, 250,000 Philadelphians read at a below basic level. So when we think of 1.1 million, roughly, Philadelphians, 250,000 of them do not read at the level that they need to. They read below a basic reading level. 35% of the school district of Philadelphia's third graders in 2017 who scored advanced or proficient on PSSAs were far below the 65% state average. So although young people are scoring proficient and advanced in our area, in our region, they are still underperforming our state average. And then the last stat I wanted to throw out there for us to think about is 22% of Philadelphia ages 16 and older lack basic literacy skills. So when we think about this, I instantly think, what can we do to start, making these numbers decrease, this percentage go lower? And I think being intentional, being strategic, but being creative and fun is the way. Because literacy and OST shouldn't feel like school, and we're going to always remind you of it. But there are cool things that we can do to just do our part. So I hope everyone is ready. So let's talk about the summer literacy plan. That's the next slide. So our summer literacy plan. I know times are crazy right now for everybody. We didn't know a pandemic was going to hit us because we would have been planning for summer way back when. So my team and I wanted to support as best we could. We wanted to take a little bit of the load off of you. So what we are doing we're going to create literacy toolkits. And they're going to be based on themes and books. They'll have read aloud plans. They'll have connection activities. They'll have supplemental activities. They'll have extension activities. And they'll also have some games. So very similar to kind of like the read aloud plans that have been coming out. We're going to do that again for, I think it was 6 weeks that we kind of flushed out for everybody. So you can expect to get 6 weeks of plans with resources, connection activities, supplemental activities, vocabulary, just a full comprehensive kit on how to do literacy. And this is something that you can use part of it, you can use all of it, you can adopt it, you can just use it as a planning framework. You don't have to. It's definitely something that we want to use to support you because we get it and we know it's a lot to do right now. you're kind of planning summer and going through summer at the same time. So we're with you and we want you to know that you're supported. Another way that we're going to be supporting this summer is through our light touch literacy sessions. So we'll still be doing some virtual training and development sessions where the coaches will be able to support you with your literacy needs. So whatever read aloud needs, independent reading, literacy rich environment needs you have, the coaches will be there to support you. So they'll probably offer those sessions twice throughout the summer. And then the next plan is our summer reading book list. So we came up with a list of literature that highlights both the core content areas for OST, creative and performing arts, health and athletics, and STEM. But we also, given the current time, thought about some of those controversial and pressing topics of the world today, like racism. And we created a book list that we'll be sharing with you all. So you can use that as a way to select literature this summer. And then finally, the Literacy Lounge. So that's going to be your time to kind of wind down, reflect, and collaborate. And that'll be hosted by myself and the lead literacy coach, Kiera. And that's just basically where you'll come in at the end of the week, reflect on what went well, what didn't, and equip yourself to kind of go into the next week with a better plan if necessary, or to ramp up, challenge yourself. So that'll be the space where you'll be able to collaborate with your colleagues and the OST literacy team. And then our last thing, and this is something that I thought is the next slide, in. This is something that came up after all of this. I was like, I think this would be a really nice piece to the summer. I know some people are having in person, and I don't know, how many, but I know some. So we're going to do some virtual literacy visits and observations. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how this is going to work, because we don't have a really large team, but we do want to accommodate as many sites and providers that we can. So the early literacy coaches will conduct virtual visits and observations by request and availability. So you would have to send the coaches an email for the time and date that you would like them to observe your program. It will definitely have to be a time where literacy is happening, and they will observe it. If it's something that's virtual, they'll come into the session. You'll just have to provide them the link and how to access the session, and they will kind of give you feedback. So we're not able to get to your programs in person right now. So we're thinking this virtual observation and visit will allow us just some insight. And then you will be able to get coached and supported throughout the summer through this virtual option. So I really thought that was a cool way to keep coaches and providers connected, and also keep you feeling supported. So I want to stop for a minute because I think we went through a lot, and just see if there's any questions for me before we go on to the next slide. Are there any questions in the chat box that we need to answer before we move forward?
Hey, Victoria, will you put your email in the chat box, and then folks who are interested in the virtual visits can just send it through you to sort of assign, monitor, distribute?
Yes, absolutely.
So folks, if you're interested, please check out Victoria's email, and if you're interested in something a little bit lighter, you can jump in on those weekly opportunities. So look at the chat box as a place to let us know what you're thinking you want to do.
Thank you, Anne. So I'll continue because it's Friday and I know folks are trying to get some of that sun. So the 6 books that we picked to feature to give you toolkits are these books. So we did some research on some really good books. So we have books that highlight, like I said, the core content areas of OST, but also we got some self-expression and emotion books. And we have books that just highlight some of the things that young people are feeling. So I created kind of like a plan. And again, this is just a plan. It's not set in stone. It's always editable. It's always open for change. But based on these 6 books, I came up with a plan at a glance, a summer at a glance. And are we ready? You ready to move on? So, week 1. I know the first week is always kind of you're getting adjusted, you're getting acclimated to summer. So you can always push this back a week. But if you need something for week 1, I think it's the perfect time to talk about emotions and feelings and self-expression. Getting to know a young person early will help you throughout the entire program. So week 1, we started with the color monster, and the theme for that week is self-expression, emotion, and feeling. And then we go into week 2 with just ask, be brave, be different, be you. And that again is another self-expression book, but it's also about appreciating differences in others. And the reason why I set those 2 up in the start of program is because when you lay a very strong foundation, how young people interact, how they see others, how they respect others, how they deal with their emotions, you set yourself up for a more successful summer and year in program and all. So I wanted to start with those 2 things. And then we kicked off week 3 with some fun. So now you've started to get to know the young people. You got some rhythm. So I thought that I got rhythm would be a great way to kick off week 3, incorporate music and sharing joy. And then it also highlights the creative and performing arts. Week 4, now people are tired of just kind of sitting around. They want to get their body and bones loose and muscles moving. So the Field is an athletics book that highlights sports and teamwork and the perfect kind of way to talk about those topics. Week 5 is a family traditions and trying new things. So you're getting to the point where you know the young people, and some of them now have adjusted and they're cool. So you want them to always remember trying new things, and it's a book that highlights health. And then finally, week 6, buzzing with questions. As we know, we have very inquisitive young people that we work with. So we want them to tap into that. We want them to highlight their curiosity, but it's also a book that focuses on STEM and insects. And it's something you can go outside and do, or if you're virtual, you can have them do some things outside at home and then come back to the virtual session to do. So I kind of set the week up, the six weeks up of like different things, and I wanted them to kind of be scaffolded in a way that you can build on each. So that's our summer at a glance. I'm ready for the next one. And then our tentative literacy lounge schedule. So I felt Friday, the end of the week, lunchtime, you kind of like the lunch and learn model. I really like that. I thought they were very informative. So I wanted that to happen. So after every week, you'll have a literacy lounge where you can come reflect with your colleagues, with the OST team, and we'll talk about things that you want to improve on, things that really went well. But that's just a session for you to kind of wind down and prepare for the next week. So this is the tentative schedule for that. And they're always on Fridays at the same time. And then questions. So I think I seen a question pop up, but it disappeared on me pretty quickly.
So we did have a question from Aisha asking if there was a reading list available for middle school.
So I began to construct a older youth list. We have not really, I mean, there are some books available. I do have some books available for older youth. Tell Aisha, just email me and then we'll talk through it. But yes, there's some books that I've identified as really good books to use for older youth. And then was there another question?
It says,
I
could
do
this
see that.
reading list be sent out?
Say it one more time, I'm sorry.
Could this reading list be sent out?
Could the reading list be sent out? Yes, this will all be sent out to you. You will get kind of all of this information in a nice, handy packet for you to work through and use as you see fit. So yes, the reading list will be sent out. Any other questions?
I just want to jump in here and talk about the books. Victoria and I are working on trying to get you at least one copy of our reading list books. But we are still working on distribution and seeing if we can get our hands on the number of copies so that every elementary site can get a copy of the 6 books that that Victoria and her team are building projects around. So heads up, we'll know about that within the next week or so. And so keep an eye out for that. And again, with Victoria, we'll email her. I think the book list for older youth and middle school, great idea. I know she and her team have been thinking about that. And any other ideas or suggestions?
And then I think Naomi, someone raised their hand.
Yes, so I saw that Mikasa had her hand raised. So I just wanted to make sure she had a question. I know sometimes we raise our hands without knowing virtually. So just wanted to make sure she didn't have any questions, or if she did, that she could talk through them a little bit. All right, I think we're good.
Great. So thank you so much, Victoria and Kiara and the literacy team. They are excited about all the different projects and ready to push that out and provide some support. Again, if you would like someone to visit your site, if you want a little bit more one-on-one, Victoria, will you put your email in again, just to keep it in multiple places in the chat? Email Victoria and she can connect you to someone who can do that up to the capacity that we have. Great, thank you. And then if folks had specific questions about recommendations or whatnot, Victoria is a great resource for that as well. And again, we will send you updates about the availability of getting the books live for at least one person on your staff. And that goes back to this survey I keep talking about. I believe that the link went out today through PHMC. So we will, and that asks for the address that supplies would be sent to. So connect to whoever gets that PHMC email. It did go out this morning. And on it is that survey that says, are you doing virtual and in person? Where would you like supplies sent? And that is going to be really important for us to get information about where we can send copies of the books, as well as a number of other different supplies that we're trying to get to you. All right, so we're going to shift. If there's no more questions, we're going to shift over to hear from Ann Pearson at the Free Library.
Thank you,
ready,
Ann.
Ann? Thank you, Victoria.
Good morning. Thank you, Anne. My name is Ann Pearson. I am from the Free Library of Philadelphia. I also wanted to introduce my colleague, Darius McGinnis, who is also here with me. And let me just see if I can share my screen. Oh, okay. Are you able to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you. We are here to talk a little bit about our summer programs at the library this summer. We have our program Summer of Wonder, and I wanted to just take a minute to share the amazing artwork that was created this year for our summer programs. This is actually by a local high school artist named Deanna Sanders, and we're really excited to be able to share this artwork. Obviously, things have changed a little bit with the pandemic. So all of our summer programs are now virtual. So we're not able to share this artwork as much as we thought we might in printed materials, but I wanted to be able to share this with you all. Give me 1 second. My name is Ann Pearson. I work at the Free Library. I'm in the Youth Services and Programs Department at the Free Library. I am the Summer Learning Manager there. So I sort of coordinate all of our citywide summer programs that are going on. Darius, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Darius McInnes. New to Philly, newish. I'm the Summer Learning Curriculum Specialist with the Free Library, and I'm also a third-year doctoral student at Penn, and my research is based on how kids learn in the summertime.
Thanks, Darius. And our email addresses are up here. We can also share them as well, so please feel free to reach out to us. Our Summer of Wonder program is really our summer learning program that happens. Normally it happens in all the libraries during the summer. This year the program is completely virtual. But the goals of Summer of Wonder are to support and enhance literacy skills for all ages, to foster a love of reading and learning for all Philadelphians, and to help combat summer slide. So the Summer of Wonder kind of provides a framework for children and teens to participate in fun and engaging learning experiences throughout the summer. So our libraries are still closed at the moment, but some of the things that we are trying to do this summer, we are doing a lot of virtual programming. So you can still connect with your favorite activities. Your neighborhood libraries are doing a lot of virtual programming. We do have a virtual calendar that's on our website at freelibrary.org/summerreading. Our Youth Services and Programs also has a Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at FLP Youth Services. And we are sharing daily literacy activity challenges. And we're also doing every week on Wednesdays at 11, we have different performers that will be doing different programs that anyone is free to join and check those out. I think we've done yoga for kids, and we've had a snake party. We've done a magic show, and those will be going on every week until the end of August. So we hope you will check those out. We also have an online platform where you can register, anyone can register, and you can use that to track your different activities that you're doing, and you can track your reading, time spent reading. You can do book reviews and other activities, and you can collect points and earn badges throughout the summer. And that is something that you can sign up for individually or as a group. So if your camp group would like to sign up for that, we encourage you to do that. And then you can track what you're doing throughout the summer. It sounds like you have a great literacy plan in place. So if you wanted to have a place to be able to track what you're doing, you can sign up. You'll find a sign up link at our on our website, again, freelibrary.org/summerreading, and you can register right there. As part of Summer of Wonder, we also have our Summer Camp Challenge. So the Summer Camp Challenge, we encourage camps and groups to incorporate at least 30 minutes of reading and literacy activities throughout the summer. So in the past, we provided training and materials to help camps incorporate some of the light touch literacy components, including read alouds and independent reading, writing, and literacy games. And Darius is going to talk a little bit more about all of those components, and we'll talk about some other resources that we have to help support the work that you all are doing this summer. Darius.
Thank you, Anne. Okay. Hi, everyone. So before we get started with this component, I do have to preface this with saying that this is our first time doing this virtually, and I'm going to try to sum this up as quickly as I can. Because I tend to get a little long-winded about this. So before I go ahead and get started, if you can, in the chat box for the next minute, I want you to respond to this question. So in your words, either a phrase or one word, how do you define literacy? Think about the books you read as a child. Think about the activities you did in school or over the summertime, or even think about just the daily interactions that you have with folks in your family or folks around the city. How do you define literacy? And then I'll take a look at some of the responses in the chat box. And can you see the responses? I can't see any. All I can see is the screen.
So we have some of the responses are curiosity, imagination, perspective, communication, learning, being able to read and write, brain development, empowering, discovery and reflection, communication of interest, significant, understanding, comprehension, exploration of language in all forms, written communication, fun.
Is that it? All right, thank you. The reason why we typically start with this question is because we just really want people to sort of hone in on the fact that literacy can mean many different things. Just besides the textbook definition for, which is the ability to read and write. We also think about everything that you all just said, right? It's adventure, it is understanding, it's reflection, critical thinking, written language, exploration, curiosity. It's all of these things. And so at the Free Library, what we like to do is we like to incorporate all of these different things and these elements into our work, specifically for the benefit for the kids whom we serve. For this portion, I'm going to go over what the summer slide is, talk a little bit about the 5 pillars of literacy, go into read alouds and some strategies that you can do or that we do with the Free Library, and that we can also provide as sort of like to supplement what you're already doing. I'm going to go over how we use poetry, independent reading, writing, and some literacy games, things that you can do at your camp or at your site, even with like the virtual component to what you're doing. And then at the end, I'm going to go, we'll have time for some questions. I'm going to really try to speed through this, so I apologize in advance. You can go ahead and go to the next slide.
I'm trying, Vera, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying.
It's okay.
Why it's not responding. There we go. Sorry.
There we go. Oh, it's okay. So for those who aren't familiar, the summer slide is a phenomenon that's that measures where a kid. So throughout the school year, they're learning, they're going to school, and they're engaging in all their activities. And then at the end of the school year, either sometime in May or in June, typically. Right when the summer vacation begins throughout the summer, and then when they go back to school, what a lot of studies have found is that many of the kids regress in their learning and their reading with their math skills, which is on average about 2.6 months of skills that are lost. With reading is an average of 2 months, and then like an overall and like a holistic loss is for 1 month, and these effects are shown to be cumulative. We can answer some questions on this a little bit later, because I know some people have some feelings about like how this is assessed and what kids were used to, or excuse me, were involved in the study to assess these things. But we've looked at some different studies, and I've looked at some in my research, and I'd be happy to talk about that with you all. But what we found is that these effects tend to be exacerbated for children who live in low-income neighborhoods, albeit less access to camps, to programming, less access to childcare, things of that nature. And so we think that these things sort of work in tandem with a break in routine from school, and then resulting in the loss of literacy. If you go to the next slide, please. Well, we found that this is a problem for kids in Philadelphia, particularly just as Victoria mentioned. 60% of kids in Philly don't read on grade level, and 250,000 Philadelphians read at a below LASIK level. And so we're thinking that the summer slide has contributed to these findings, and I'm glad that Victoria brought that up, because that's exactly what I found, and what we found with the free library. And these effects are cumulative, right? So they go beyond the losses that kids experience for this summer, and what we fear is that kids may never sort of like recoup or regain these losses. But the good news is, first of all of you and everyone throughout the city providing opportunities for children to learn throughout the summer, access to quality books and enrichment helps to facilitate positive learning experiences for kids, and the effects of these programs can have some lasting impressions up to 2 years after the participation. Next slide, please. I'm going to briefly go over the 5 pillars of reading instruction. So a little of this may sound redundant because Victoria laid out some wonderful things about literacy, but I'm just going to briefly touch on these 5, and if you all can just kind of save your questions for the end, because I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. At the Free Library, we do work on incorporating all 5 of these. The first is phonemic awareness, the second is phonics, the third is fluency, the fourth is vocabulary, and the fifth and the final component is comprehension, which we saw earlier in the responses to the icebreaker. A lot of people did mention that comprehension is part of what literacy is just in general, and so we want to anchor that as considering how each of these components sort of work interdependently, and so they're not, one is more important or one is more vital than the other. They all work in tandem for reading instruction. Next slide, please. So phonemic awareness, as most of you know, is the ability to identify, manipulate, and substitute phonemes. And so phoneme is the smallest unit with sound. And so particularly with the youngest learners, like in preschool or in pre-K, I taught preschool, pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade. And one of the things that I did with either the youngest learners or with kids who struggled a bit was we focused on the smallest unit of sound. And one of the things that we hear a lot is what's the difference between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. And so phonological awareness is a broad skill that and it includes identifying and manipulating the units of oral language, like parts of words, syllables, onsets, and rhymes. And then phonemic awareness actually refers to the specific ability to focus and manipulate the sounds in spoken words. Next slide, please. And then we look at phonics. So this is an instructional method that pairs the symbols to sounds, right? So in the English language, for us, it's looking at letter sounds and just reminding kids that each letter makes a sound within a word, and then when they come together, sometimes these things can be blended. So like for blends, or like sh makes one sound, which is actually called a digraph, when two letters come together and they make one sound. And then for a blend, it's like for bl, right? So you can hear the individual b and l in the blend. If you can go to the next slide. And then as kids sort of put the previous two together, we want them to read more often with the ability to read accurately and quickly. And so that's either in their head or out loud. Next slide, please. And then as they read, as they become more fluent, we're looking at the sort of like stored set of words that kids can recognize and kids know the meanings of. So with vocabulary, more reading expands their vocabulary and then expands their access to text. So when they're reading some different texts, they're actually able to sort of use like inference or the meaning around another text with other vocabulary words to guess the meaning of words. Next slide. And then again, we're getting to comprehension. And so one thing that we found is that in a lot of programs focus on the ability to sort of like recall and to recognize words. But then what we want to really hone in on is the fact that if you're reading a text and then I ask you what it is that you just read, if you can't tell me what you just read, have you really just read? And do you understand what the text is saying? And this is really that transition from learning how to read and then to read, from learning how to read to reading to learn. I'm sorry, I got a little bit tongue-tied. Next slide. And so we also use read alouds for the camp challenge. We typically have a list of read alouds for the camps who sign up with the camp challenge. We have a subset of books that we have, and they're grouped by theme or by category. And we typically like to mix and match nonfiction with some fiction books. And so if you do already use some read alouds in your camp, if you can just take a moment right now, type in the chat box, what do you use some read alouds for? If you want to draw on the suggestions that we have here, please feel free to do so. But why do you do read alouds? What do you use them for? Do you use them to settle your kids down? Do you use them to teach about sharing or new vocabulary, or even, as Victoria said earlier, to have some critical conversations about race and equity? If you can just take a moment to respond in the chat. Why do you use read alouds? And can you read some of the responses? Because I
So
can't
I'm
see the chat
seeing
box.
to connect and expand learning, to look at careers in a certain field, to promote discussion, access exposure, to introduce an activity, to introduce a new theme or to start a particular discussion, to show connections to their lives. It's not just them dealing with a situation. To engage and connect with children, to teach new vocabulary and good conversation about the book and fun learning. To engage, expand vocabulary, help with fluent reading. So many reasons. To teach inflection and emotion in reading, to spark discussions on social topics, build on an idea, introduce a concept, model what great reading looks like. We've got some great discussion here. Yeah.
Writing all this down.
Engage students to think and broaden vocabulary, go over vocabulary, inspire a love of reading, to give a sense of fantasy or escape, and to support all learners.
Fantastic. Thank you all. It's all of these things, right? So these things work coterminously with the list that we have here, because you can introduce a new activity, right? You can promote discussion, and you can connect and explore and expand on the learning that they already have. I'm going to go over some things that we do, that we recommend for our camps to do. So we call them the high fives. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. These are 5 things to do before a read aloud, 5 things during, and then 5 things after. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. Before we get in to read alouds, we always ask that people read the book ahead of time. And this one particularly for me, I always say to people, because in preschool, I taught and I read a book with my students about Booker T. Washington. And for those who are familiar with his story about what he did in Richmond, if you're not, it'd be really interesting for you to look up on your own. And I can also answer that when we take questions. But there were some things that I read to the kids without reading this book first. And they had some really good questions for me about what this meant for Black people during that time in the world, and his experience in traveling like on foot from West Virginia to Hampton University. And I didn't have an answer. And so had I read the book ahead of time, I think that I could have been better prepared for that. And the second one is to decide on a focus or takeaway. This isn't always necessary, but I do remember reading or just hearing from Anne about some things, like some folks were saying to like connect and expand their learning or to start a discussion. This is good to do with your kids, just so you can kind of have a direction for where you want to go with the read aloud. You can also pick 2 or 3 words, which help to facilitate some dialogue about the story or the facts or the information in the book. It's also helpful to practice it. It's helpful for you to be familiar with, like, if the book has some alliteration, or if the book repeats some things, or if they foreshadow some things. It's good for you to have some like a baseline knowledge about that prior to reading the book. And then one thing that if the read aloud is too long, or if it seems like too arduous of a task or too long for kids to sit for, and this is even on for virtual learning, it's good to tab the book. So typically what we ask people to do is like mark some different places in the book where you can read a few pages, and the kids can go play or go run around or go stretch or take a break, and then come back and then to finish it. You can go to the next slide. These are 5 things that you can do as you read the book. So we always ask that you say the title, the author, and the illustrator, and not just to give credit to the people who created the work, but also kids so kids hear you introduce the work of others, and so this is also kind of like a thing for them to see themselves as an author, particularly with books written by people who look like them, and some pictures drawn of folks who look like them. Oh, I hear a kid. And we ask that you read slowly. Allow the kids to look at the pictures, ask questions about the pictures. You can ask.
Darius, I think your sound cut
I
out.
think you got muted.
Can y'all hear me?
There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, I'm so sorry. I don't know what just happened. What was the last thing that you all heard? I'm so sorry.
It was like maybe 30 seconds ago.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just gonna go back to this slide really briefly. I'm so sorry. During the read aloud, it's always good to introduce the author, the title. We ask that you read it, read each word on the page, allow kids to look at the pictures and the cover and guess what the book may be about. Stop and ask questions as you go along, just to keep the kids engaged, just to keep them sort of focused in on what's happening in the story. Next question. And then these are just some questions that you can ask them as you're reading, right? So what will happen next? What are you thinking right now? What does this remind you of? How would you do this differently? What about this makes this character act this way, right? Just valuing and drawing on their own experiences because their experiences are rich and they are great. And it's good for them to bring themselves into the story. Next slide, please. And then 5 things when you're done with the book. These can be interchanged with questions or with actions, right? So you could ask them about what lesson did this teach us? I know that someone brought that up earlier during the presentation. You can get their opinions on things. How was Mother Goose? What did she do? What happened when this character asked this character about this thing? Or what would you do differently? What's an alternative ending? And that's a really good point to like get them to think creatively, to get them to generate some new ideas. You can have them act it out. That's good. We call that readers theater with the free library, where kids can reenact a story, and that's a really good way to test their comprehension, to see just how closely they were paying attention. You can have them write a journal entry or to make connections to other things that you've read in class or even experiences they've had beyond it. I can go to the next slide. These are some other questions. Just as I mentioned before, you can tie this into a lesson. You can tie this into different things that you sort of want the kids to take away from the books. And then next slide. And also, so these are some different things that you can do with the text. It's more than just facts or more than just knowledge, right? Ask them to predict. With the younger ones, I usually ask them to have to take a mental picture in their head of what something can look like, to recognize like the relationship to cause and effect and how those things work hand in hand in literature, and how we can learn some lessons from either things that have been created in fictional text or things that have been sort of like recapped with nonfiction, and also to use their prior knowledge to connect with a text. So this is drawing on what kids already know, right? And this is the assumption of having the kids coming in, bringing something into the space, instead of everything being sort of like prescriptive and based on the fact that we have something to give to them. This is a space where everyone contributes. If you can go to the next one. We often choose a book with some poetry in there and just some things that poetry can do. These are just some benefits that we love and that we use with poetry. We often draw on some poems from Kwame Alexander. Last summer, we did some poems from Gwendolyn Brooks, and the kids in the camps really enjoyed these. Next slide. Some of the things that poetry can help do is to help build their fluency. One thing that I used to do when I taught preschool was like I would write out like a nursery rhyme that I would say with the kids a lot. So my kids loved the Little Bunny Foo-Foo one. So, you know, we sang it so much that one day I wrote out the words. And so I had the kids like, if I was waiting for lunch to come or we were waiting to put them down for nap time, I would have the kids like point to each of the words as we said the song to sort of associate different words within the poem or within different nursery rhymes. And one way that you can do this with the kids is with paired reading, and that's with two kids, and they can be either on the same level of reading or with different levels. With choral reading, it's when everyone reads at the same time, or with echo reading, it's when I read and then you read. Next slide, thank you. And this is just building on things that I said earlier. Go to the next slide. Talked about this, go to the next slide. And then with independent reading, I know that some of you are already doing this, so I'd be interested either during the Q&A or after this to talk with you about how you all managed to do this in the summer. This seems to be one of the most difficult tasks that we found camps to get the kids doing. For the next slide, please. We're familiar with the benefits of this. And so these are the things that we want people to like consider for with our camps about what does it look like, right? So we know that these things help to facilitate confidence. It helps for kids to move up a reading level, and it helps for kids to sustain themselves for longer periods of time, to where it's not just arbitrary, like by looking at words. We really want the kids to immerse themselves into the reading. So laughing at some different parts and making some connection to what they've read before, and then to having some dialogue with you about what they've read. Next slide. We ask that you all, or the folks who work with the camp staff, to think about how they structure these things, right? And so that's providing lots of different, like a variety of books. Some kids may want to read about sports. Some kids may want to read some stories, some fairy tales. So it's helpful for you to have a big variety of things. And then we ask that you all establish the routines. And so something that we do with the camps is we have them organize the books in a certain way. So it could be like by level or by color. And we ask you to have the kids sort of like establish their routine. And so that's modeling for them, what does it look like for me to carefully like grab a book, take care of a book, how to turn the page. I know that seems, I'm not like trying to infantilize your experiences with this, but that's something that we found in camps. Is like the folks have found that like their reading collection is destroyed at the end of the summer because some kids, they get excited when they're looking at books. And so one good thing to prevent that from happening is just to establish how we take care of books and the importance of that. Next slide. And so again, that's looking at the expectations, the modeling, to have the routine that's going, and also help kids find their reading, sort of like their level, which I'll go over how we do that at the free library. Next slide. I won't go into too much detail, but for many of the reading books, they're sort of falling on this continuum. developed by Fontes and Pinnell. These are how books are they're leveled sort of like by grade level, and some schools they do it also by age, but I'll just focus on the grade level for now. If you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer that at the end. It's for K to the beginning of first grade. These are the levels, and so for those who aren't familiar, which I know that many of you are, but just for context. So like a level A book is something that has very few words on each of the pages, and then some really like big illustrations on there to help the kids with recognizing sight words. And then so like you'll see a lot of the patterns on there. So it'll say like the ball is red, the heart is red, the robin is red, and so like you'll see things like that where kids can interchange the words and then the pictures are there to help them decode. Next slide. And then at the free library, we have the 5-finger rule, which is pretty easy. If you don't know how to help a child choose their right book, most of the kids do level reading at their school, and a lot of them already know what their level is. But just in case, like you have a little one who transfers in like from homeschooling, or a person who comes from a school district where they don't use level readers. I've seen that as well. This is a good way for you to help them do that, and that's just opening a book. And this can be done with picture books or with independent readers. You can have them open the book like into the middle of it and ask them to read. Just read the words on the page, and you want to hold up a finger for each like miscue or word that they read differently. If you get up to 5 fingers, right? So that book is too hard. If they only have 1, it's too easy. And then, so you kind of want them to get around the 2 to 3 finger range. 4, if you feel so inclined to push your kid to the next level, because you all know your students better than we do. But we do just recommend that they're reading a book where it's challenging enough that it'll sort of force them to use those different skills that we talked about in the beginning, and that Victoria talked about to read a text, but not too difficult to where it's it lets the air out of their balloon, and like it decreases their confidence. We want it to be challenging enough, but not too arduous. Next slide, please. And then also for writing, we do some writing with the kids over the summertime. We ask the camps. So these are just some examples of some writing that they can do. One thing that we use pretty often is the quick write. It's a very basic thing that doesn't really need a lot of prep. So with this, you can have the kids like respond to a prompt. They can reflect on their feelings or things that they're doing, or even like their hopes and aspirations for the upcoming school year. And these things can also be implemented with, if you look at the bottom of it, these are some different Black modalities for doing some writing with kids. And then the last thing is we love to play games. I would love to do this with you all in person, because we love to do this with the camp staff who come to visit us for this training. But just for this purpose, the games can span a different age range, and they have some different modalities with them. We have some alphabet games, word building, parts of speech, with some narrating and some storytelling, feeling and some sensing, and some drawing and performing games. And if you want to go to the next slide. So with the alphabet games, these games may be geared towards supporting the youngest learners and kids who need support with phonemic awareness. These games can range from basic letter and identification to interchanging letters to create words. So some examples could include tic-tac-toe, alphabet, Go Fish, and Hangman. And then for the word building games, These types of games support learning beyond the basic letter and sound identification. These games are often based on, like, we take the prefix or the suffix and we make some new words to help familiarize the kids with learning sight words to improve their fluency. With the parts of speech games, these are for the kids who are transitioning from learning to read to reading to learn. And this is typically around the 3rd or 4th grade. And so these types of games are very useful in helping kids identify different parts of speech. And these activities are also rooted in writing or some sort of sentence composition. Next slide. These types of games, the story and the narrating, they're great for improving the kids' comprehension, and they afford kids the opportunity to bring their personality into play. And it helps to introduce this new modality of literacy with, like, the beginning, middle, end identification, which are really effective for your youngest learners all the way up to 2nd grade. The feeling and the sensing games are really good for kids who learn through hands-on engagement. The kids can spell out words with Play-Doh or some other objects, or they may use art supplies to express their ideas. And this type of learning can be differentiated for every type of age. And then finally, for the performing and the guessing games, so readers theater, just as I mentioned before, and dramatic performances, they're great ways for kids to express themselves and their knowledge and their creativity through performance. And the kids may also play games like charades or act out an animal, a person, or an object. We usually have kids act like Beyonce, for instance, right? Or for other people, for other folks to guess. And this method can also be differentiated based on age range. That's it for the games. And then, so we also have a Philly Champs reading guide, which is typically printed out and given to camps, regardless of how they sign up or how they ask us for support throughout the summer. This is a really cool handbook that a lot of people rely on because it has very low prep, easy, literacy things to do throughout the summer. These are sort of some one-off activities that you can do with your kids. If you're waiting for lunch to be served, or waiting for parents to come pick up, or if it's raining outside and you just need a few things that you can do. This can be done anywhere and with anyone. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Anne, who's going to talk about the Summer of Wonder page that we have available on Beanstack.
Thank you, Darius. I also wanted to add that we have this Reading Champs guide. It is available online at readingchamps.org. And we are also printing this. So I'd love to be able to get this out to all of you. Hopefully, Anne, I could work with you to figure out how we could get copies of this out to sites that would be interested in having it.
Yeah, let me just jump in with that real quick. Folks, if you could just put in the chat box, if you would like a copy of the Free Libraries presentation and want more information. Ann Pearson, do you mind putting your email in the chat box? And folks, if you're interested, just put in there, yes, Free Library, send me what you got. And then Ann can connect directly with you and get you all the information from today.
Yes, absolutely. I will put that in.
And we can also put this in our conference resource sheet.
Great.
As well.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. We would love to share this with you and share as many resources as possible this summer. I know we're all sort of adjusting to a new reality and we're trying to do everything virtually this year. So we're trying to figure out how to do that and what supports and resources we can provide to help everyone. So I will just point out again our website, freelibrary.org/summer reading. You'll see that we do have, there's a tab also for Camp Challenge and for resources, and we're starting to add more things to that. Darius and some of our summer team put together some videos on the different components that Darius was talking about. So those will be up on the website soon. And we also hope that you will sign up for Summer of Wonder online. This is what our Beanstack interface looks like. And you can register groups here or individually. And you can track all your reading and activities that you were doing during the summer. You can sign up here, and we are trying to contact groups that do sign up through this, or if you want to reach out to us, that would be great. We would just love to connect with camps this summer and just connect with you all and hear what you were doing and how we can support that. And this is our contact information. Again, I can type my email address in there, Darius, if you'd like to type yours as well. And if there are questions or anything else, we'd love to hear from you. Oh, great. Thank you all.
Great. So does anybody have any questions for the free library? Anything that was presented or how to get more involved? Any questions at all that Anne can help answer? And folks, you can either raise your hand or you can put it in the chat box and we'll take a look at what folks are saying. Yes. Lots of folks are interested in getting more information.
Anne, are we able to kind of collect all the information from the chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Thank you all so much. I hope you all have a great summer. I know it's been kind of crazy trying to figure out what summer looks like in these times. We appreciate everything that you're doing. And I just have to say that with our libraries closed, we have not had the connection with everyone. So it's wonderful to see faces and to hear voices this morning and to hear what you all are doing this summer. So thank you.
Great. Thank you both. We really appreciate all the information and the extra resources and really exciting. Oh, we got a good question from Eileen. All right. So before we wrap it up, let's see about a couple of questions. For virtual programming, how would you identify reading grade level from students? What suggestions can you give if a student feels embarrassed not reading on grade level with their peers? It's a great question.
Darius, did you want to answer that? I know you've talked about that sometimes in our trainings.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the nuance behind that is that it challenges what we know about helping kids find their level. But I would say to help them find what their level is, I think if you could probably ask them to do sort of like the 5-finger rule on their own, or to ask them to work with a parent or another adult. I think that that's a good way to help them find their level. And then as far as the embarrassment, what some camps have done is they've color coded their books with like hiding like the level with like a sticker so that the people who are on the staff can differentiate what levels different books are on, as opposed to like saying level A or D or Q. But I think that the most important thing is establishing sort of this environment where everyone understands that no one is better or higher than anyone else. We all just read at different levels and different times. So one thing I used to say to my kids is that everyone's kind of on their own ladder, right? So all of us are going to the same place, just at different times. Some people climb a little bit slower than others, and that's okay. But I would encourage your kids to sort of work interdependently with one another, and to support each other by using positive language about how all of us, though we're starting at different places, all of us will end up at the same place with reading.
Victoria, do you want to chime in at all? That's a really great question. We might have lost her.
Okay. I can, if she's trying to unmute, I can just add, also just having books available that are not necessarily leveled reading books, that can help as well. And I think just encouraging students, especially during the summer, that reading can and should be fun, and that it doesn't have to always be, that you have to be reading something that is on your level, that you can read, the books. You can read books that are below your grade level and it's still fun and you're still learning, or you can read books that might be kind of challenging, and you can still get something from it. And also just, I think, paired reading as well, that if you're sharing a book, it's not necessarily that one person is on one level or the other, that you're sharing the book together.
Hey, Ann, I'm sorry. I was having trouble.
No problem.
I have two suggestions. I think I agree both with Ann and Darius. I think the other thing is all about how you address reading earlier on. So you have to create a culture where people feel comfortable and safe. That's important. And I, as an educator, I used to show the students struggle so that they are okay with embracing struggle when they have it. So as the facilitator, you mess up intentionally so they can see that you too make mistakes, so it feels comfortable. But there's online platforms that can help you gauge reading levels. It's not 100% accurate, but it does give you an idea, and we can share some of those as well. Some are free, and then some do require a subscription, but you can use that as well if interested. But I always say, allow young people to pick up what they like.
Yes.
That's the first start. Pick up what they like. It really, grade level will come. Just get some literature in their hands.
Great. All right, we have just a few more minutes. If there is another comment in this, please feel free to put it in the chat. And then Naomi, do you want to talk a little bit? Are you still here? And do you want to share about the last session?
I am still here. So our last session will start at 11 o'clock with Casey Thompson. I will send the link in our chat box right now. But it's all about kind of the developing brain and working through adversity and really supporting our students through times of crises.
Great. I just want to thank the Free Library and thank Victoria and her team for joining today. And everybody, thank you so much for jumping into all the different sessions we've had. And especially today, it's Friday, the sun is shining. I really hope that each of you gets to go outside, take a few deep breaths, and enjoy this day. So have a good weekend. Please join us for the next session, and keep your eyes peeled for emails and information heading your way, either through your program liaison and through PHMC. Naomi is